I secretly won millions in the lottery, then tested my family by asking for help. You know that gut-wrenching feeling when your own family, the people who should have your back, treat you like you're utterly disposable? I lived that reality for decades. But what they didn't know was that a quiet lottery ticket was about to rewrite everything, giving me the kind of poetic justice they never saw coming. I'm 35, living in Ohio, and until a few months ago, I was just another guy grinding through a mediocre job, swallowing endless humiliation at work. But the real sting, the one that truly ate at me, came from my family. They never saw me as valuable. Ever. I've got two brothers and a sister. Ryan, my older brother, was the golden boy, the pride and joy. He started a marketing company, bankrolled by my parents, and he never missed a chance to flash his success. My younger sister, Emily, was a cashier, raising two kids, barely scraping by. And Aaron, my other brother? 30 years old, still living at home, cycling through jobs like they were seasonal fashion trends. I was always the forgotten middle child. No support, no help, ever. When I was laid off at 26, they didn't even offer me a couch. When I needed money to fix my car, just to keep my job, Ryan, my successful older brother, looked me dead in the eye and said, "Sometimes, it's better to accept that some people are born to stay where they are." That hit hard. Then, earlier this year, everything changed. I won the lottery. It wasn't one of those insane half-billion jackpots, but after taxes, it was a little over $18 million. Enough to completely transform a normal person's life. I was in shock for weeks. I locked it down, hired a lawyer, got an investment advisor, and kept it all a total secret. I kept going to my crappy job, living in the same apartment, faking normalcy. But something inside me started to churn. All those years of being ignored, dismissed, treated like a burden by my own family, it fueled a fire. Before I made any big moves, I decided to run a test. A brutal, necessary test. I quit my job. I spun a story. My company went bankrupt. I was in deep financial trouble. Overdue bills, broken down car, couldn't pay rent. I went to my parents, to Ryan, to Aaron. They all listened. Some even chuckled uncomfortably. Ryan, ever the magnanimous one, offered me a warehouse assistant position at his company, minimum wage, of course, and I'd have to prove my worth. My parents, with their secure retirement and no debt, claimed they were tight on expenses. Aaron? He just shrugged, "Tough situation, bro." The only one who truly stepped up was Emily. She gave me $200. And it wasn't just the money, it was how she gave it. She asked if I had food, offered me the tiny sofa in her tiny house. "You can count on me," she said, even though I knew she was barely surviving with her two kids. That moment broke me, but in a good way. After that, I started to pull away from everyone else. Emily was the only one who knew my new address. I moved, slowly beginning to change my life. On the outside, I was still the same struggling guy. On the inside, I had a new perspective, a plan. I'm telling you this now because I think the time for the next step is finally here, and I'm still grappling with why my own family always saw me as disposable. Even with everything I know, everything I have, there's still this ghost of the ignored kid at the family table. I hadn't told anyone about the lottery, but I knew that silence wouldn't last forever. I began planning my definitive exit, not just from my old life, but from the image they had of me. I delved deeper into investments. I bought a discreet house in a quiet neighborhood, using a legal intermediary for anonymity. I renovated it slowly, no flash, no showing off. I traded my old beat-up car for a new one that looked surprisingly similar, just better, safer. Anyone looking from the outside would just assume I'd landed a stable, well-paying job. All this time, Emily kept checking in. Messages, asking if I needed anything, offering leftovers. She never asked for a dime, never pried about my job. She just said she trusted me. That unwavering faith? It marked me in a way I can't even fully explain. Then, one day, Ryan showed up at my old apartment. The doorman messaged me, man in a suit, demanding to know where you are. I ignored it. A week later, my mother called. Ryan was apparently going around saying I was irresponsible, that I'd abandoned the family, that I was missing out of pride. She ended the call with a cutting blow. "What you're doing to your older brother, who has always been an example, isn't fair." I swallowed hard. Up until then, I'd still considered helping my parents beyond the basics. But that call, it changed everything. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about Ryan's emotional well-being. Not once did they ask if I was eating, where I was sleeping, if I was sick or in crisis. It was just Ryan, Ryan, Ryan. I continued observing from a distance. Ryan's company seemed okay on the surface, but I started noticing cracks, constant temporary job ads, a move to a cheaper office, fewer social media posts about business trips. I dug deeper. He'd lost a massive contract, debts were piling up, he was taking out personal loans to keep up appearances. I stayed silent. Meanwhile, I was quietly building my own empire. I founded a consulting firm, focused on restructuring small family businesses. I hired top professionals, took my time. In 6 months, we had 3 regular clients and a healthy cash flow. One of my first hires was Eric, a former coworker who used to give me rides home without ever asking for gas money. Just pay me with a good conversation, he'd always say. A genuinely decent guy. I brought him on as a logistics supervisor. He nearly cried when he saw the salary. "Are you sure I'm worth all this?" he stammered. I just looked at him and said, "I'm sure you're worth even more." I gave him a new company car, told him to pick the model. He hugged me, speechless for a full minute. When I felt everything was in place, it was time to visit Emily. I went to her house on a Friday afternoon. She was on the porch, tending her plants, kids splashing in a bucket in the yard. She saw me and her smile was so calm, so genuine. We had coffee, I played with my nephews, then asked to speak to her privately. I told her everything. The lottery, the test, how she was the only one. She was quiet for a moment, then looked at me. "I didn't do it expecting anything," she said. "I did it because I love you and because I know what it feels like to be treated like your trash." The next day, I took her to see 3 houses. She picked the simplest one, the one with a yard for the kids and an old iron stove. I bought it cash. Gave her a new car. She chose a used, family-friendly model, nothing fancy. I started paying for my nephew's schooling. Full tuition. And then I offered her a position in my company as operations manager. She hesitated, thinking she wasn't ready. Then she accepted, but on one condition: you have to teach me everything properly. I want to do it right. Back in the other world, Ryan was sinking. He messaged me for the first time in almost a year. Direct, no pleasantries. "Do you know anyone who can help me? The company is a mess. I need an investor or I'll have to sell." I simply replied, "Let's talk." We met at a coffee shop. Ryan walked in with his usual pomp, expensive suit, shiny watch, that forced smile. But this time, something was different. He looked smaller, tired. For 30 minutes, he blamed the market, the government, everyone but himself. He'd done everything right, he insisted, just needed a little push. Then he looked at me, desperation in his eyes, and blurted, "You still have contacts in finance, right? I remember you talking about some acquaintances. Could you recommend someone to buy the company or invest?" I just stared at him for a few seconds. I didn't let on what I knew. I just said, "Maybe I could buy it myself." He laughed in my face. A genuine, dismissive laugh. "You buy it, bro? I don't know if you'd have the money for that. You never had money. But if you know someone who wants to invest, that's why I came to you." That was it. I opened my bank account on my phone and showed it to him. The smile vanished. Instantly. I laid it all out. He tried to borrow money. I said no, but I was interested in buying the company. He needed to sell, fast, or lose everything. He named an absurd price. I told him no. "We'll get an evaluation, and I'll pay the real value right now." He seemed stunned but quickly shifted into salesman mode, trying to inflate what was clearly sinking. I asked him to send all the info by email. I'd get back to him. My lawyers and analysis team confirmed it. The company wouldn't last 2 more months. But it had structure, a name, and could be salvaged with drastic changes. We closed the purchase for a symbolic value. I could have waited for bankruptcy and bought the scraps for nothing, but I made sure the contract stated the company was 100% mine. And Ryan? If he wanted to stay, he'd submit to new management and accept my assigned position. He accepted. He had no other choice. The following week, I called an all-hands meeting. I introduced Emily as the new administrative manager, reporting directly to me. Then I announced a restructuring, eliminating redundant positions, including Ryan's old, empty title, huge salary role. He was demoted to a commercial analyst with targets and supervision. He stayed silent through the entire meeting. Didn't even look at me. The message was clear. Since then, he's at work at 8 a.m. sharp, clocks in, attends meetings. Quiet. Avoids non-professional talk. That spark in his eyes, the arrogance? Gone. Some colleagues commented on his change. I don't respond. I don't explain. I just observe. A few days later, my parents called, indignant. I was humiliating my own brother, they said. He needed support, not punishment. I asked them, "Do either of you remember the last time you asked me how I was?" Silence. Then my mother murmured, "He has always been very sensitive." Since that day, I only cover their health insurance payments. Nothing more. I haven't cut the tie entirely, but I'm not deepening any connection either. They finally realized the cord tying me to that old dynamic was severed. Aaron, of course, tried to worm his way back in as soon as he heard about the company purchase. Messages about how proud he was, how he always believed in me, offering to help with whatever I needed. I politely declined, leaving no room for doubt. Eric, my ride-giving colleague, is still my supervisor. He adapted beautifully, one of the most respected team members. Never demanded, never flattered. Just worked hard and treated everyone with respect. After the first semester, I gave him a generous bonus. He thanked me, "You're changing lives, man." And I replied, "I'm trying to change mine. The rest is a consequence." Sometimes, thinking about all this, I feel a lump in my chest. It's not happiness or anger. It's a strange mix of relief and emptiness. As if I'd waited so long for a certain kind of recognition, only to find it meant nothing when it finally came. And when I finally had the power, I realized what I really wanted wasn't revenge. It was respect. And that either comes genuinely or it's worthless. On Emily's birthday, I took my nephews to a water park. It was the first time I saw those kids laugh without a care in the world, eat whatever they wanted, without being told no all the time. She hugged me at the end of the day. "This is more than any gift," she said. "You gave them a childhood I could never give them." That hit me deep. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing something truly right. Not for revenge, but for someone who always believed in me when no one else did. Update 1 asterisk the news spread like wildfire. Not because I said anything. Someone from the old team posted a photo of their new ID badge with my name as CEO and tagged the location. Within days, messages poured in from distant cousins, old schoolmates, even people who'd ignored me at family barbecues. All so happy for me, all remembering how hardworking I was. My mother even messaged, asking if she could mention in her church group that her son now owned a company. Said it would raise the family's name. I replied, "Do what you think is best," but honestly, it twisted my stomach. Ryan remained silent, but his tone at work shifted. He became more helpful, more present. He even tried to compliment one of Emily's presentations in a meeting. It was forced, mechanical, but it was there. I didn't acknowledge it. Neither did Emily. She just continued with her usual quiet competence. Some employees noticed the atmosphere and asked what was happening. I simply said, "Restructuring." The tension really ratcheted up when Ryan found out he was losing his company car. It was an Audi leased under the old management, on the list of cuts. I sent him a formal email, 1 month to return it. He stormed into my office, the paper clutched in his hand. "This is personal, isn't it?" he demanded. I looked him dead in the eye, calm as can be. "No, Ryan. This is management." His face went scarlet. He shook his head, slammed the door, but the car was returned within the deadline. 2 days later, my mother called, crying. I was destroying her son, she wailed. He was so down. All of this was out of my pride. I listened in silence. When she finally paused, I said, "Mom, do you remember Ryan never offered me help when I was unemployed? That he laughed at me in front of others? That he told me some people are born to be mediocre?" She went utterly silent, then whispered, "He shouldn't have said that, but he did. And you never defended me." She hung up. The following week, Aaron showed up at the company, unannounced. He tried to hug me, said he was there to contribute, mentioned he'd taken a technical course, ready for a fresh start. I asked him to leave a resume at reception and follow normal channels. He didn't like that one bit. Family should have priority, he argued. My reply was sharp. The priority here is for the one who respected me when I had nothing. Emily heard everything from the next room. When he finally left, she came in, looked at me, and said, "You did the right thing." They never understood that respect doesn't begin when the money appears. Soon, rumors started circulating within the company. That I'd only bought the business because someone helped me, that I was just a front for a real investor. Someone even suggested I was involved in gambling. When that reached my ears, I went straight to the source. I gathered all the leaders for an alignment meeting. I showed them the documents, the contracts, the values. Not to justify myself, but to make it crystal clear. Everything there was my merit, my decision. No ghost investor, just someone who spent years being underestimated and decided to use what he had learned. Ryan was in the room. He didn't say a word, just stared at the floor. After that meeting, the atmosphere shifted. Some looked at me with more respect, others with fear. I wanted neither. Just professionalism. One afternoon, I ran into Ryan in the hallway. He hesitated, then stopped. "You got lucky," he said, grudgingly, "but you knew how to take advantage of it. I'll give you that." I looked at him. I could have thrown everything in his face. Years of humiliation, contempt, arrogance. But I just said, "The luck was not having to depend on you." He nodded, somewhat ashamed, and walked away. That Saturday, I went to Emily's again. Toys for the kids, a toolkit for her new husband, whom I still didn't know well, but who had proven to be a decent, hard-working man. He greeted me with a suspicious look, but seeing the kids run to hug me, he relaxed. Emily took me aside. "He thought you were one of those arrogant millionaires who forget where they come from," she confessed. "I haven't forgotten," I replied. "I just learned not to go back to where I was never wanted." She laughed. "You can come over whenever you want," she said. I stayed until dark, having dinner on the patio, kids splashing in a little inflatable pool. For the first time in a long time, I felt part of something real, simple, without masks. Sunday brought an unexpected call. My father. He rarely called. Always quieter, more distant. He asked if he could stop by the company to talk. About what? I asked. He hesitated. About the family. I agreed, but on two conditions: outside business hours, and the conversation had to be direct. No speeches. He showed up Monday, still carrying that tough demeanor, but he looked nervous. He sat across from me, silent for almost a minute. Then he said, "We were very wrong about you. I'm only just now realizing it." I remained silent. He continued, "I always thought you were weak, too sensitive, but you were the only one who didn't fall, the only one who didn't break. And now you're the one lifting everyone up." My eyes welled up, but I held it in. I replied, "I'm not lifting anyone up, Dad. I'm just giving back what I received. Whoever gave me support got something in return. Whoever turned their back on me reaped what they sowed." He nodded slowly. Then, the inevitable request, could I help with the house mortgage? They were having difficulties. I told him no. But the health insurance would continue, and I'd cover any real medical emergency. He didn't insist. He stood up, said, "Thank you for what you're already doing," and left. The following week, Ryan asked to speak with me. I hadn't expected it. He said he wanted to talk frankly. We met in an empty conference room at the end of the day. He started by confessing he hadn't slept well in months, that he lived with a feeling of being in debt, not just financially, but in his attitude. He felt like a failure, having lost the company our father always held up as the example of the son who made it, and now he worked for me, the brother he'd spent his life belittling. I listened. It sounded genuine, but my mind couldn't shake the memories of his laughter, his public snubs, his dismissive words. When he finished, he said, "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed you to know that I know. I know what I did to you." I replied that I wasn't there to punish anyone, but I wasn't going to pretend nothing happened. What he was feeling now, I told him, was the weight I had carried my whole life. And if he wanted to stay, he would follow the same rules as anyone else. No special treatment, no privileges. Just work. He nodded. He said he understood. Since then, he's been more reserved, but also more efficient. Meets deadlines. No complaints. Sometimes, I still see him avert his gaze when he passes me. Maybe shame. Maybe fear of another mistake. Aaron, on the other hand, insisted again. He showed up uninvited to a company barbecue, trying to schmooze everyone, making forced jokes, proclaiming he always believed in my potential. I watched him from a distance, desperately trying to fit in. Some colleagues were kind, but you could tell no one was buying his act. Finally, he approached me, a smile plastered on his face. "Bro," he blurted, "we should get closer. We're getting old, aren't we?" I replied calmly, "You had your whole life to get closer. It's too late now to force things." He was speechless. Tried to laugh it off, but left early. He's disappeared again since. The usual. My mother sent me a long email. She missed me. She wanted to get the family together for Christmas. She said it was important not to let resentment win, but she never mentioned the things she herself said or ignored all those years. No apology, just an invitation disguised as reconciliation. I didn't reply. I didn't go. Instead, I spent Christmas with Emily and her family. Toys for the kids, cooking with her husband. We spent the night in the living room, watching movies with popcorn. It was simple, but it was the first time in years I ended a night without that hollow emptiness that always came after a family event. Update 2 *, the most concrete change happened about 2 months ago. Ryan was summoned to a meeting with an important client. I let him lead the presentation, wanting to see how much he'd learned. He was professional, but at a certain point, he tried to inflate numbers, making promises we hadn't aligned with the team. The client noticed. Afterward, they pulled me aside, asking if it was trustworthy to continue the project with someone who distorted metrics. That hurt me deeply. I wasn't willing to risk the company's reputation, and certainly not Emily's, who led the operational side, for my brother's ego. That same day, I called a meeting, Ryan, Emily, and HR. I was direct. Explained what happened, its consequences, and what I expected. He tried to justify it, saying he was trying to impress. I cut him off. Unacceptable. Starting that week, Ryan was demoted. No more external negotiations, just internal reports. The new position came with a salary reduction, still decent, but well below what he earned before. He signed the papers, face serious. Didn't argue. Only asked me not to tell our parents. I asked him to leave the room. Then I looked at Emily. "Do you think I went too far?" She replied, "No. You were fair. And justice is something they never gave you." But even with all that, what moved me most was something else entirely. The following week, one of our new interns, a humble kid, just barely 20, always quiet, stopped me in the hallway. I thought he was going to quit or complain. But he just said, "I wanted to thank you. I never thought I'd work in a place where people like me have a voice, where a black woman like the manager has real power. Emily is an inspiration for my mom, and you are too, for giving her that space." I was speechless. He said goodbye and left. I walked into my office, closed the door, and I cried. It wasn't anger. It wasn't relief. It was a release, years of invisibility just pouring out. It was realizing that I had finally managed to create something they never gave me, an environment where no one had to kneel to be seen. After that, I started adjusting things. Improved the employee's health plan, created an emergency fund for collaborators in difficult situations, and gave Emily full autonomy to lead local social projects using part of our quarterly profits. Ryan remained silent. He watched everything with that look I knew so well, a mix of bitterness and regret. He knew the game had changed. He was just another piece on a board he once thought he controlled completely. Over time, Ryan's presence became almost invisible. He did his job, stayed out of the way, rarely exchanged more than 3 sentences with me. I knew he felt humiliated, but unlike what he did to me my whole life, I never responded with mockery. Just maintained a distance. Cold, but fair. It was around that time my mother showed up at reception, unannounced. Emily messaged me, "Your mom is here. Says she needs to talk." She was insistent. I went down. She sat there with that fragile, seeking sympathy look. She stood quickly when she saw me. "Can we talk for a minute?" Just the 2 of us. I took her to a small meeting room. She started with the same old speech: family, unity, forgiveness, how important I was to everyone. I waited for the real part. Of course it came. She and my father were struggling to keep the house, accumulated bills, a late mortgage, a real risk of losing it. I spoke calmly. I told her I was already paying for their health insurance and would continue to cover medical emergencies, but I was not going to pay for decisions they themselves had made. She cried. Said it was hard to see a son refuse help. And I replied, what was hard was being treated as invisible for 30 years. I learned to live without your affection. Now you will learn to live without my money. She just stood there in shock. She tried to argue, but I stood up and opened the door. The conversation ends here. She left without looking back. In the following days, comments circulated among distant relatives. I'd gone to my head. Money doesn't change character, it only reveals it. I was ungrateful. Playing the boss. I heard this from a cousin at a shared lunch. I laughed. I asked her what she knew about my story. She stammered. Said it wasn't personal. Then keep your mouth shut about my life, I told her. Emily found out later and messaged me. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Just live your life. The rest is noise. I've been thinking a lot about that. Maybe the hardest part isn't the money or the changes. It's realizing you spent your life wanting to be seen by your own family. And when you finally achieve it, it's already too late for that connection to be sincere. Because then, what they see isn't you. It's the bank account. It's what you can give. I didn't want to become my brother's boss. I just wanted to be treated as an equal, as someone with value. But maybe that was never within my reach. Maybe I spent too much time trying to earn a type of love that never existed. A week later, I received an envelope at home, no return address. Inside, a 3-page handwritten letter from my father. It started remembering things from my childhood, my first science fair win, the day I broke my arm at school and cried alone because he was late to the hospital. Things I honestly didn't think he'd noticed. Then he said he was proud of me, but that he was raised to believe a man who shows feeling raises weak children, and that became a rule for him, even when it hurt. And then, of course, came the expected part, the request. He was ashamed to ask, but if I could help with the mortgage, he and my mother could grow old with dignity. I folded the letter, put it away, and didn't reply. Not out of revenge, but because by that point, I understood that any help from me would always be accompanied by the expectation of automatic redemption. They didn't want to build something new, they just wanted to return to the position of control they had lost. And that wasn't going to happen. That same month, Emily received an executive offer from a competing company. Better salary, more benefits. When she came to tell me, I thought she was going to accept. But she told me she'd rejected it. I don't trade dignity for money, she said. Here, I have a voice. I have a purpose, and I work with someone who truly trusts me. That's priceless. I almost cried right then and there. I stayed silent, just nodded, and gave her a raise the following month, with an included bonus. It was the least I could do. On the company's anniversary, we had a simple event, just for the team. Real food, no corporate nonsense. At the toast, it was Emily who spoke. She talked about the beginning, about how the company was built by someone no one believed in, not even his own family, and how it was now a space where no one had to beg to be heard. People applauded. Some got emotional. I stood there, glass in hand, my heart racing. I looked around and saw faces that once barely greeted me, now treating this as a personal victory. I saw respect, not fear, not flattery. The kind of respect that doesn't come with a last name or inherited fame. That night, I left late. I sat in my car in the parking lot, looking at the building. I thought about everything that had happened since that first day I asked for help and only received excuses and contempt. And I also thought about everything I still wanted to build. Not to prove anything, but to give space to people who are also ignored. Update 3 asterisk today, almost 2 years after it all began, I still have the same cell phone number. I still drive an ordinary car. I still wear simple clothes. But inside, I have completely changed. I am no longer the guy who needed others' approval to feel he was worth something. I know what I've built, and I know who I can truly count on. Ryan is still at the company, now as a process analyst. He does his job competently, without errors. But the shine, that air of superiority, it's gone. Sometimes he looks at me like someone still trying to understand how the scales tipped. The difference is that now he speaks to me with respect, not because I demand it, but because for the first time, he sees someone he never really knew how to look at. My parents still live in the same house. They pay the minimum on the mortgage, they live just enough. I don't interfere. Their health insurance is guaranteed, and that's it. Contact is rare. Sometimes a message on my birthday, another at the end of the year. I respond politely, but it doesn't go beyond that. They lost the right to participate in my life the moment they decided I didn't deserve attention when I needed it most. Aaron has completely disappeared. I heard he tried to open a supplement store, and it went bankrupt in less than 6 months. He hasn't shown up again or tried to get close. And honestly, he's not missed. Emily is still the heart of the company. She has grown. She graduated from an online university at night, fully paid for by me. And today, she is respected by the entire team. Her children proudly call me uncle. Sometimes they send me drawings saying I'm the hero of their mom's work. I keep them all in a drawer. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if no one had helped me back then. Maybe I would have left for good. But one person saw me when no one else did. And it was for her, and for people like her, that I decided to move forward. Today, I don't have a perfect family, but I have peace. And that, I'm telling you, is worth more than any prize.